The Martians have landed. There were two ways of writing this book. I could have held back information which is stunningly bizarre, but true. This would be the easy way, staying within the comfort zone and communicating only that which would not challenge too many people's sense of possibility. Or I could treat the readers like fully formed, fully connected, multidimensional, adult human beings and communicate all the relevant information, including some which will stretch their sense of reality to breaking point. As always, I have chosen the latter. It is not for me to edit information for the readers. It is for the readers to edit the information for themselves. How arrogant and patronizing to think that I should keep information back from people because they are not ready for it. Who am I to decide that? And how can I know if they are ready for it unless they hear it and can therefore decide for themselves? Some of my friends have urged me to tell people the basic story. But for God's sake, don't mention the reptiles. You will see what they mean by that very shortly. I understand their concern. But I can only be myself. And I have to tell all that I know and not only that which maintains the comfort zone. That's just me. The way I am. Of course, the theme of the book will attract ridicule from those with a vision of possibility the size of a pea and, naturally, from those who know it to be true and don't want the public to believe it. But so what? Who cares? I don't. As Candace said, even if you are in a minority of one, the truth is still the truth. So here's the story. Punches. Unpulled. In summary, a race of interbreeding bloodlines. A race within a race, in fact, were centered in the Middle and Near East in the ancient world and, over the thousands of years since, have expanded their power across the globe. A crucial aspect of this has been to create a network of mystery schools and secret societies to covertly introduce their agenda while, at the same time, creating institutions like religions to mentally and emotionally imprison the masses and set them at war with each other. The hierarchy of this tribe of bloodlines is not exclusively male, and some of its key positions are held by women. But in terms of numbers it is overwhelmingly male, and I will therefore refer to this group as the Brotherhood. Even more accurately, given the importance of ancient Babylon to this story, I will also call it the Babylonian Brotherhood. The plan they term their create work of ages, I will call the Brotherhood agenda. The present magnitude of Brotherhood control did not happen in a few years, even a few decades or centuries. It can be traced back thousands of years. The structures of today's institutions in government, banking, business, military and the media have not been infiltrated by this force. They were created by them from the start. The Brotherhood agenda is, in truth, the agenda of many millennia. It is the unfolding of a plan, piece by piece, for the centralized control of the planet. The bloodline hierarchy, at the top of the human pyramid of control and suppression, passes the baton across the generations. Mostly sons following fathers. The children of these family lines who are chosen to inherit the baton are brought up from birth to understand the agenda and the methods of manipulating the great work into reality. Advancing the agenda becomes their indoctrinated mission from very early in their lives. By the time their turn comes to join the Brotherhood hierarchy and carry the baton into the next generation, their upbringing has molded them into highly imbalanced people. They are intellectually very sharp, but with a compassion bypass and an arrogance that they have the right to rule the world and control the ignorant masses who they view as inferior. Any Brotherhood children who threaten to challenge or reject that mold are pushed aside or dealt with in other ways to ensure that only safe people make it to the upper levels of the pyramid and the highly secret and advanced knowledge that is held there. Some of these bloodlines can be named. The British House of Windsor is one of them. So are the Rothschilds, the European royalty and aristocracy, the Rockefellers, and the rest of the so-called Eastern establishment of the United States, which produces the American presidents, business leaders, bankers, and administrators. But at the very top, the cabal which controls the human race operates from the shadows outside the public domain. Any group which is so imbalanced as to covet the complete control of the planet will be warring within itself, as different factions seek the ultimate control. This is certainly true of the Brotherhood. There is tremendous internal strife, conflict and competition. One researcher described them as a gang of bank robbers who all agree on the job, but then argue over how the spoils will be divided. That is an excellent description, and through history different factions have gone to war with each other for dominance. In the end, however, they are united in their desire to see the plan implemented, and at the key moments they overwhelmingly join forces to advance the agenda when it comes under challenge. You will probably have to go back hundreds of thousands of years to find the starting point of this story of human manipulation and of the family lines which orchestrate the great work. The more I have researched this over the years, the more obvious it has become to me that the origin of the bloodlines and the plan for the takeover of the Earth goes off planet to a race or races from other spheres or dimensions of evolution, extraterrestrial as we call them. If you doubt the existence of extraterrestrial life, then consider this for a moment. Our Sun is only one of some 100 billion stars in this galaxy alone. Sir Francis Crick, the Nobel laureate, says there are an estimated 100 billion galaxies in our universe, and he believes there are at least 1 million planets in our galaxy that could support life as we know it. Think of what the figure might be for the entire universe, even before we start looking at other dimensions of existence beyond the frequency range of our physical senses. If you traveled at the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second, it would take you 3 years to reach the nearest star to this solar system. It says much for humanity's level of indoctrination that to speak of extraterrestrial life is to appear cranky. Yet to dismiss it and suggest that life has only emerged on this one tiny planet is considered credible. You only have to consider the amazing structures that abounded in the ancient world to see that an advanced race existed then. We are told that only people primitive in comparison to modern humans lived in these times. But that is patently ludicrous. Like most official thinking, the historical and archaeological establishment makes up its own stories, calls them proven facts, and simply ignores the overwhelming evidence that they are wrong. The idea is not to educate, but to indoctrinate anyone who doesn't conform to the official line of history is isolated by their fellow historians and archaeologists who either know their jobs, reputations and funding are safer when they stick to the official version, or, frankly, they cannot see beyond the end of their noses. The same can be said of most people in the teaching and intellectual professions. All over the planet are fantastic structures built thousands of years ago which could only have been created with technology as good as, often even better than, we have today. At Baalbek, northeast of Beirut in the Lebanon, 3 massive chunks of stone, each weighing 800 tons, were moved at least a third of a mile and positioned high up in a wall. This was done thousands of years BC. Another block nearby weighs 1,000 tons, the weight of 3 jumbo jets. How was this possible? Official history does not wish to address such questions because of where it might lead. Can you imagine ringing a builder today and asking him to do that? You want me to do what? He would say, "You're crazy." In Peru are the mysterious Nazca lines. The ancients scored away the top surface of the land to reveal the white subsurface, and through this method were created incredible depictions of animals, fish, insects and birds. Some of them are so large they can only be seen in their entirety from 1,000 feet in the air. The knowledge which allowed wonders like Nazca, Baalbek, the Great Pyramid at Giza and other amazing creations to be built with such precision and scale, came from an advanced race who, in ancient times, lived among a far more primitive general population. This race is described as the gods in the Old Testament texts and other works and in oral traditions of antiquity. I can hear followers of the Bible denying that their book speaks of the gods. But it does. When the word God is used in the Old Testament, it is often translated from a word that means gods. Plural Elohim and Adonai are two examples. You can easily understand that a race performing technological feats of such magnitude should be seen as gods by a people unable to comprehend such abilities. In the 1930s, American and Australian servicemen landed their planes in remote parts of New Guinea to drop supplies for their troops. The locals, who had never seen a plane, believed the servicemen were gods, and they became a focus of religious beliefs. This would have been even more extreme in the ancient world had their advanced race been beings from other planets, stars or dimensions, flying craft more advanced than anything flown, at least officially, by today's military. An influx of knowledge from outside this planet or another source would explain so many of the mysteries that official history greets with a deafening silence. The incredible feats of building also become explainable, and so does the mystery of why early civilizations like Egypt and Sumer, the land of Shinar in the Bible, began at the peak of their development and then fell into decay. When the normal course of evolution is to start at a lower level and slowly advance through learning and experience, there was clearly an infusion of highly advanced knowledge that was later lost to most people. In every culture throughout the world are ancient stories and texts which describe the gods who brought this advanced knowledge. This would again explain the mystery of how the ancients had a phenomenal understanding of astronomy. There are endless legends all over the world of a time they call the Golden Age, which was destroyed by cataclysm and the fall of man. The ancient Greek poet Hesiod described the world before the fall. Man lived like gods, without vices or passions, vexation or toil, in happy companionship with divine beings, extraterrestrials. They passed their days in tranquility and joy, living together in perfect equality, united by mutual confidence and love. The earth was more beautiful than now, and spontaneously yielded an abundant variety of fruits. Human beings and animals spoke the same language and conversed with each other telepathy. Men were considered mere boys at 100 years old. They had none of the infirmities of age to trouble them, and when they passed to regions of superior life, it was in a gentle slumber. One, utopian as that may sound, there are countless stories from every ancient culture which describe the world in the distant past in those terms. We can recreate that vision again if only we change the way we think and feel. The most comprehensive accounts of an advanced race are contained in tens of thousands of clay tablets found in 1850, about 250 miles from Baghdad, Iraq, by an Englishman, Sir Austen Henry Layard, as he excavated the site of Nineveh, the capital of Assyria. This was located near the present Iraqi town of Mosul. Other finds have followed in this region, which was once called Mesopotamia. The original source of this knowledge was not the Assyrians, but the Sumerians who lived in the same area from, it is estimated, 4000 to 2000 BC. I will refer to the clay tablets, therefore, as the Sumerian texts or tablets. They are one of the greatest historical finds imaginable, and yet 150 years after they were discovered they are still ignored by conventional history and education. Why? Because they demolish the official version of events. The most famous translator of these tablets is the scholar and author Zecharia Sitchin, who can read Sumerian, Aramaic, Hebrew and other Middle and Near Eastern languages. 2. He has extensively researched and translated the Sumerian tablets and has no doubt that they are describing extraterrestrials. Some researchers say that he used a later version of the Sumerian language to translate an earlier one and, therefore, some of his translations may not be 100% accurate. I think his themes are correct. Indeed, other accounts and evidence supports this. But I personally doubt some of the detail. I think that a number of Sitchin's interpretations are extremely questionable, while I agree with the overall thesis. According to his translations and others, the texts say that the Sumerian civilization, from which many features of modern society derive, was a gift from the gods, not mythical gods, but physical ones who lived among them. The tablets call these gods the Anak, Ki, those who from heaven to earth came, and Din, Gir, the righteous ones of the blazing rockets. The name of Sumer itself was Ki. En. Gir, the land of the Lord of the blazing rockets and also land of the watchers. According to Sitchin, the ancient text known as the Book of Enoch also calls the gods the watchers, as did the Egyptians. The Egyptian name for their gods, the Neteru, literally translates as watchers, and they said that their gods came in heavenly boats. According to Zecharia Sitchin, the tablets describe how the Anunnaki came from a planet called Nibiru, the planet of the crossing, which he believes has a 600-year elliptical orbit that takes it between Jupiter and Mars and then out into far space beyond Pluto. Modern science has identified a body it calls Planet X, which has been located beyond Pluto and is believed to be part of this solar system. But an elliptical orbit would be incredibly unstable and difficult to sustain. Scientists, I trust, believe that Sitchin is mistaken in his Nibiru theory, though his main themes about the Anunnaki are correct. The Sumerian tablets, from Sitchin's translations, describe how, during the early formation of the solar system, Nibiru caused the near destruction of a planet that once existed between Jupiter and Mars. The Sumerians called it Tiamat, a planet they nicknamed the watery monster. They say that it was debris from Tiamat's collision with a Nibiru moon, which created the Great Band Bracelet, the asteroid belt which is found between Mars and Jupiter. What remained of Tiamat was thrown into another orbit, the texts say, and eventually it became the Earth, see Figure 2. The Sumerian name for the Earth means the cleaved one, because a vast hole was created, they say, by the collision. Interestingly, if you take away the water in the Pacific Ocean, you will be left with a gigantic hole. The solar system showing the location of the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, which, though the details vary, many ancient and modern accounts suggest is the remains of a planet or part of a planet. The tablets are the written accounts of oral traditions that go back enormous amounts of time, and you have to be careful that details have not been added or lost, and that we don't take symbolism or parable as literal truth. I am sure that some confusion did occur in this way. I have doubts myself about the Nibiru Tiamat scenario and its alleged timescale. But there is much truth in the texts which can be proven, not least in their knowledge of astronomy. The tablets depict the solar system with the planets in their correct positions, orbits and relative sizes, and their accuracy has only been confirmed in the last 150 years since some of these planets have been found. The tablets describe the nature and color of Neptune and Uranus in ways that have only been confirmed in the last few years. What's more, the modern experts did not expect those planets to look as they did. Yet the Sumerians knew thousands of years BC what our advanced science has only just discovered. Most stunning about the Sumerian tablets is the way they describe the creation of Homo sapiens. Sitchin says the Anunnaki came to the Earth an estimated 450,000 years ago to mine gold in what is now Africa. The main mining center was in today's Zimbabwe, an area the Sumerians called Ab Zedu, deep deposit. He claims studies by the Anglo-American Corporation have found extensive evidence of gold mining in Africa at least 60,000 years ago. Probably 100,000. 3. The gold mined by the Anunnaki was shipped back to their home planet from bases in the Middle East. Sitchin claims the tablets say, I think there is much more to know about this gold mining business. And I don't believe that was the main reason they came here. If indeed it was a reason at all. At first the gold mining was done by the Anunnaki version of their working classes. Sitchin says, but eventually there was a rebellion by the miners, and the Anunnaki royal elite decided to create a new slave race to do the work. The tablets describe how the genes of the Anunnaki and those of the native humans were combined in a test tube to create the updated human capable of doing the tasks the Anunnaki required. The idea of test tube babies would have sounded ridiculous when the tablets were found in 1850. But that is precisely what scientists are now able to do. Again and again modern research supports the themes of the Sumerian tablets. For instance, there was a sudden and so far unexplained upgrade of the human physical form around 200,000 years ago. Official science is silent on the cause of this and mutters terms like the missing link. But some unavoidable facts need to be addressed. Suddenly the previous physical form, known as Homo erectus, became what we now call Homo sapiens. From the start the new Homo sapiens had the ability to speak a complex language, and the size of the human brain increased massively. Yet the biologist Thomas Huxley said that major changes like this can take tens of millions of years. This view is supported by the evidence of Homo erectus, which appears to have emerged in Africa about 1.5 million years ago. 4. Well in excess of 1 million years their physical form seems to have remained the same. But then, out of nowhere, came the dramatic change to Homo sapiens. About 35,000 years ago came another sudden upgrade and the emergence of Homo sapiens sapiens. The physical form we see today. The Sumerian tablets name the two people involved in the creation of the slave race. They were the chief scientist called Enki, Lord of the Earth, Ki equals Earth, and Ninkasag, also known as Ninti, Lady Life, because of her expertise in medicine. She was later referred to as Mami, from which comes Mama, and Mother. Ninkhasag is symbolized in Mesopotamian depictions by a tool used to cut the umbilical cord. It is shaped like a horseshoe and was used in ancient times. She also became the mother goddess of a stream of religions under names like Queen Semiramis, Isis, Bharati, Diana, Mary and many others, which emerged from the legends of this all over the world. She is often depicted as a pregnant woman. The texts say of the Anunnaki leadership, they summoned and asked the goddess, the midwife of the gods, the wise birth giver, saying, to a creature give life, create workers, create a primitive worker, that he may bear the yoke. Let him bear the yoke assigned by Enlil. Let the worker carry the toil of the gods. 4. Enlil was commander of the Anunnaki and Enki was his half-brother. Enki and Ninkhasag had many failures as they sought the right genetic mix. The tablets tell us there are accounts of how they created people with major defects and also human-animal hybrids. Horrible stuff. And exactly what is claimed to be happening today in the extraterrestrial human underground bases around the world. The story of Frankenstein, the man created in a laboratory, could be symbolic of these events. It was written by Mary Shelley, the wife of the famous poet. He and she were high initiates of the secret society network which has hoarded and suppressed this knowledge since ancient times. The tablets say that Enki and Ninkhasag eventually found the right mix which became the first Homo sapiens, a being the Sumerians called a Lu. Lu, one who has been mixed. This is the biblical Adam. Lu was a genetic hybrid, the fusing of Homo erectus with the genes of the gods to create a slave, a human worker bee. Some 200,000-300,000 years ago. A female version was also created. The Sumerian name for human was Lu, the root meaning of which is worker or servant. And it was also used to imply domesticated animals. This is what the human race has been ever since. The Anunnaki have been overtly and now covertly ruling the planet for thousands of years. The mistranslation of the Bible and symbolic language taken literally has devastated the original meaning and given us a fantasy story. Genesis and Exodus were written by the Hebrew priestly class, the Levites, after they were taken to Babylon from around 586 BC. Babylon was in the former lands of Sumer, and so the Babylonians, and therefore the Levites, knew the Sumerian stories and accounts. It was from these records, overwhelmingly, that the Levites compiled Genesis and Exodus. The source is obvious. The Sumerian tablets speak of Din, the abode of the righteous ones. This connects with the Sumerian name for their gods. Din, Gir, the righteous ones of the rockets. So the Sumerians spoke of Eden and Genesis speaks of the Garden of Eden. This was a center for the gods. The Anunnaki. The Sumerian tablets speak of King Sargon the Elder being found as a baby floating in a basket on the river and brought up by a royal family. Exodus speaks of Moses being found as a baby floating in a basket on the river by a royal princess, and how he was brought up by the Egyptian royal family. The list of such coincidences goes on and on. The Old Testament is a classic example of the religious recycling which has spawned all the religions. So when you are looking for the original meaning of Genesis and the story of Adam, you have to go back to the Sumerian accounts to see how the story has been doctored. Genesis says that God, the gods, created the first man, Adam, out of dust from the ground and then used a rib of Adam to create Eve, the first woman. Zechariah Sitchin points out that the translation of dust from the ground comes from the Hebrew word tit, sorry mother, and this itself is derived from the Sumerian term ti, It, which means that which is with life. Adam was not created from dust from the ground, but from that which is with life living cells. The Sumerian term, T, means both rib and life, and again the translators made the wrong choice. Eve, she who has life, was not created from a rib, but from that which has life living cells. The human egg for the creation of the Lulu, Adam, came from a female in Abzu, Africa, according to the Sumerians, and modern fossil finds and anthropological research suggests that Homo sapiens did indeed come out of Africa. In the 1980s, Douglas Wallace of Emory University in Georgia compared the DNA, the blueprint for physical life, of 800 women, and concluded that it came from a single female ancestor. 5. Wesley Brown of the University of Michigan said, after examining the DNA of 21 women of different genetic backgrounds from around the world, that they all originated from a single source who had lived in Africa between 180,000 and 300,000 years ago. 6. Rebecca Cann of the University of California at Berkeley did the same, with 147 women of diverse racial and geographical backgrounds, and she said their common genetic inheritance came from a single ancestor between 150,000 and 300,000 years ago. 7. Another study of 150 American women from genetic lines going back to Europe, Africa and the Middle East, together with Aborigines from Australia and New Guinea, concluded that they had the same female ancestor who lived in Africa between 140,000 and 290,000 years ago. 8. Personally, I think the human race was seeded by many sources, not just the Anunnaki. The Sumerian tablets and later Akkadian stories give the names and hierarchy of the Anunnaki. They call the father of the gods An, a word that means heaven. Our Father who art in heaven. An, or Anu to the Akkadians, stayed mostly in heaven with his wife, Antu, and he made only rare visits to the planet they called Du, home in the faraway built, a word which evolved into earth. Or at least, that is the Zechariah Sitchin translation. The descriptions could also imply that Anu stayed mostly in the high mountains of the Near East where the Garden of Eden, the place of the gods, is reckoned on good evidence to have been. And he made only rare visits to the plains of Sumer. A Sumerian city was called Eridu. Anu sent 2 sons to develop and rule the earth. The tablets say they were Enki, the guy they say created Homo sapiens, and his half-brother Enlil. These two would later become great rivals for ultimate control of the planet. Enki, the firstborn of Anu, was subordinate to Enlil because of the Anunnakis' obsession with genetic purity. Enlil's mother was the half-sister to Anu, and this union passed on the male genes more efficiently than Enki's birth via another mother. Later the tablets describe how the Anunnaki created bloodlines to rule humanity on their behalf, and these, I suggest, are the families still in control of the world to this day. The Sumerian tablets describe how kingship was granted to humanity by the Anunnaki, and it was originally known as Anu-ship after An or Anu, the ruler of the gods. The Brotherhood families are obsessed with bloodlines and genetic inheritance, and they interbreed without regard for love. The royal families, family, and aristocracy of Europe and the so-called Eastern establishment families in the United States are obvious examples of this. They are of the same tribe and genetically related. This is why the Brotherhood families have always been obsessed with interbreeding. Just as the Sumerian tablets describe the Anunnaki, they are not interbreeding through snobbery, but to hold a genetic structure which gives them certain abilities, especially the ability to shapeshift and manifest in other forms. I'll come to this in more detail shortly. The tablets describe how humans were given the ability to procreate by Enki, and This led to an explosion in the human population, which threatened to swamp the Anunnaki, who were never great in number. The Anunnaki had many internal conflicts and high-tech wars with each other, as the Enlil and Enki factions fought for control. It is generally accepted by researchers of the Anunnaki that Enki is on humanity's side. But it seems to me that both groups desire dominance over this planet. And that is their real motivation, as Zecharia Sitchin documents in his translations. And readers of the Indian holy books, the Vedas, will confirm. There were many accounts of the gods going to war with each other as they battled for supremacy. The Sumerian accounts describe how the sons of the Anunnaki gods were most involved in these wars. These were the offspring of Enki and Enlil, the half-brothers who became fierce rivals, and their sons played out that battle in a high-tech conflict. The tablets say one battle they appeared to have been involved in was the biblical destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. These cities were probably located at the southern end of the Dead Sea, where, today, radiation readings are much higher than normal. This was when, according to the Bible, Lot's wife looked back and was turned into a pillar of salt. After referring to the original Sumerian, Zecharia Sitchin says that the true translation of that passage should read that Lot's wife was turned into a pillar of vapor, which, on balance, is rather more likely. All over the world in every native culture, you will find stories of a great flood, and the Sumerian tablets are no different. Sitchin says they tell how the Anunnaki left the planet in flying craft, as an enormous surge of water wiped out much of humanity. There is no doubt that an unimaginable catastrophe, or more likely catastrophes, were visited upon the Earth between approximately 11,000 and 4,000 BC. The geological and biological evidence is overwhelming in its support of the countless stories and traditions which describe such events. They come from Europe, Scandinavia, Russia, Africa, throughout the American continent, Australia, New Zealand, Asia, China, Japan and the Middle East. Everywhere. Some speak of great heat which boiled the sea, of mountains breathing fire, the disappearance of the sun and moon and the darkness that followed, the raining down of blood, ice and rock, the earth flipping over, the sky falling, the rising and sinking of land, the loss of a great continent, the coming of the ice, and virtually all of them describe a fantastic flood, a wall of water, which swept across the earth. The tidal wave caused by the comet in the film Deep Impact gives you an idea of what it would have been like. Old Chinese texts describe how the pillars supporting the sky crumbled, of how the sun, moon and stars poured down in the northwest, where the sky became low, rivers, seas and oceans rushed to the southeast where the earth sank and a great conflagration was quenched by a raging flood. In America, the Pawnee Indians tell the same story of a time when the North and South polar stars changed places and went to visit each other. North American traditions refer to great clouds appearing and a heat so powerful that the waters boiled. The Greenland Eskimos told early missionaries that long ago the earth turned over. Peruvian legend says that the Andes were split apart when the sky made war with the earth. Brazilian myth describes how the heavens burst and fragments fell down, killing everything and everyone as heaven and earth changed places. And the Hopi Indians of North America record that the earth was rent in great chasms, and water covered everything except one narrow ridge of mud. 9. All of this closely correlates with the legends of Atlantis and Mu or Lemuria. 2. Vast continents, one in the Atlantic and the other in the Pacific, which many people believe were ruled by highly advanced races. The continents are said to have disappeared under the sea in the circumstances described above, leaving only islands, like the Azores, as remnants of their former scale and glory. Atlantis was described by Plato, 427 to 347 BC. The ancient Greek philosopher and high initiate of the secret society mystery school network. To this day, this secret network has passed on much knowledge to the chosen few while denying that privilege to the mass of the people. Official history dismisses Plato's contention that such a continent existed, and there are apparent historical discrepancies in his accounts. But there is geological support for his basic theme. The Azores, which some believe were part of Atlantis, lie on the mid-Atlantic ridge, which is connected to a fracture line that encircles the planet, see figure 3. This line continues for a distance of 40,000 miles. The mid-Atlantic ridge is one of the foremost areas for earthquakes and volcanoes. 4 vast tectonic plates, the Eurasian, African, North American and Caribbean, all meet and collide in this region, making it very unstable geologically. Both the Azores and the Canary Islands, named after dogs canine and not canaries, were subject to widespread volcanic activity in the time period Plato suggested for the end of Atlantis. Tachyllite lava disintegrates in sea water within 15,000 years, and yet it is still found on the seabed around the Azores, confirming geologically recent upheavals. 10 other evidence, including beach sand, gathered from depths of 10,500 to 18,440 feet, reveals that the seabed in this region must have been, again geologically recently, above sea level. 11. The oceanographer Maurice Ewing wrote in National Geographic magazine that either the land must have sunk 2 or 3 miles, or the sea must once have been 2 or 3 miles lower than now. Either conclusion is startling. 12. The geological and biological evidence also suggests that the widespread volcanic activity which caused the sinking of the land in the region of the Azores happened at the same time as the breakup and sinking of the land mass known as Appalachia, which connected what we now call Europe, North America, Iceland and Greenland. 13. Even their degree of submergence appear closely related. Similar evidence can be produced to support the view that the continent known as Mu or Lemuria now rests on the bed of the Pacific. 14. The so-called Bermuda Triangle between Bermuda, southern Florida, and a point near the Antilles has long been associated with Atlantis. It is also an area steeped in legends of disappearing ships and aircraft, submerged buildings, walls, roads, and stone circles like Stonehenge. Even what appear to be pyramids have been located near Bimini, under the waters of the Bahama Banks, and within the triangle. 15. So have walls or roads creating intersecting lines. 16. Some other facts that most people don't know. The Himalayas, the Alps and the Andes only reached anything like their present height around 11,000 years ago. 17. Lake Titicaca, on the Peru-Bolivia border, is today the highest navigable lake in the world at some 12,500 feet. Around 11,000 years ago, much of that region was at sea level. Why are so many fish and other ocean fossils found high up in mountain ranges? Because those mountains were once at sea level. Recently so in geological terms. 2. There is increasing acceptance that the Earth has suffered some colossal geological upheavals. The debate, and often hostility, comes. Figure 3. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge, the center of earthquake and volcanic activity in the area of the Atlantic Ocean where Plato apparently placed Atlantis. With the questions of when and why. These upheavals have obviously involved the solar system as a whole, because every planet shows evidence of some cataclysmic events which have affected either its surface, atmosphere, speed and angle of orbit or rotation. I think the themes of the Sumerian tablets are correct, but I doubt some of their detail, not least because of the vast period that passed between 450,000 years ago when the Anunnaki are said to have arrived, and the time only a few thousand years ago. When these accounts were written down, there was certainly an enormous cataclysm on the Earth around 11,000 BC, which destroyed the advanced civilizations of the high-tech Golden Age, and that date of 13,000 years ago is highly significant and very relevant to the time we are living through now. Just as the planets of the solar system revolve around the Sun, so the solar system revolves around the center of the galaxy, or this part of it at least. This central sun or galactic sun is sometimes referred to as the Black Sun. It takes about 26,000 years for the solar system to complete a circuit of the galactic center, and this is known in the Indian culture as a yuga. For half of that 26,000 years, the Earth is tilted towards the Black Sun, the light source, and for the second 13,000 years it is tilted away. Some researchers believe these cycles are therefore very different, as the planet is bathed in positive light for 13,000 years and then moves into the darkness for the next 13,000. This fundamentally affects the energy in which we all live. Interestingly, it was 13,000 years ago that the Golden Age would appear to have concluded in cataclysm and conflict. And today, with the 13,000 year cycle of darkness reaching its conclusion, there is a rapid global spiritual awakening, and incredible events await us in the next few years. We are entering the light again. So there was a fantastic cataclysm around 13,000 years ago, which brought an end to the high-tech civilizations of the Golden Age. But was it the only one? The evidence suggests not. A friend of mine in California, Brian Desborough, is a researcher and scientist I have great respect for. He has been involved in aerospace research and has been employed in this and other scientific research by many companies. Brian is a feet-on-the-ground guy who looks at all the evidence and goes where it, rather than convention, takes him. He has compiled some highly detailed and compelling information about the ancient world and its connection to the brotherhood manipulation of today. While he worked for a major United States corporation in the 1960s, their physicists completed their own independent studies which suggested that about 4,800 BC a huge body, which we now know as Jupiter, careered into our solar system. The outer planets were thrown into disarray, and Jupiter eventually crashed into a planet which orbited between the present Jupiter and Mars. The physicists said the remains of this planet became the asteroid belt, and that part of Jupiter broke away to become what we now call Venus. As Venus, then a vast chunk of matter, was projected into space, it destroyed the atmosphere and life of Mars before it was caught by the Earth's gravitational field. The study claimed Venus made several orbits of the Earth before its momentum hurled it into its current position in the solar system. It was those orbits, the physicists said, that brought devastation and a tidal wave about 4,800 BC. They believed, as Brian Desborough does, that before this time Mars orbited where the Earth is now, and the Earth was much closer to the Sun. The brilliant light of Venus, as it passed close to the Earth, may have led to the idea of Lucifer, the light bringer. The most ancient Mesopotamian and Central American records do not include Venus in their planetary accounts. Only later does it appear. There was an obsession with Venus in many cultures, with human sacrifices being made to it. The unofficial study by the physicists has never been published. But let us consider the evidence for some of its claims. When you sprinkle particles on a vibrating plate, you can recreate the planetary orbits of the solar system. When vibratory waves moving outward from the plate center meet waves moving in the other direction, a so-called standing wave is formed as the two collide. This causes the particles to build up and Create a series of concentric circles. These will be equally spaced if single frequencies collide with each other. But if, as with the solar system, a spectrum of frequencies are involved, the circles will be unequally spaced in accordance with the vibrational pressures. Place an object on these vibrating circles of particles, and it will begin to orbit the center of the plate, carried by the energy flow caused by the vibrational interactions. Heavier objects placed anywhere on the plate will be drawn to one of these concentric circles, and these objects will themselves form wave patterns around themselves which will attract lighter objects to them. In our solar system, the most powerful waves are being emitted from the center by the sun. Obviously, because that represents 99% of the matter in the solar system. These waves from the sun interact with other cosmic waves, so forming a series of standing waves which, in turn, form concentric circles or vibrational fields orbiting the sun. The heaviest bodies, the planets, are caught in these circles and thus orbit the sun. The planets also create less powerful wave circles around themselves, and these can attract lighter bodies which orbit them. The moon orbiting the Earth is an example of this. So anything that would disturb this harmony of vibrational interaction would affect these concentric circles of energy and, if this was powerful enough, change the orbit of planets. What the physicists say happened with Jupiter and Venus would certainly be powerful enough to do this. These circles of standing waves exist around the sun in relation to the vibrational pressures involved, and they do not need a planet to exist. They exist anyway, and a planetary body merely locks into them. Therefore, there are many more of these vibrational roadways in the solar system than there are planets. And if a planet or body is ejected from its orbit, it will eventually lock into another wave, another orbit, when its momentum slows enough to be captured. This, Desbra believes, is what happened when the fantastic vibrational pressures of the Venus comet passed close to Mars and the Earth and hurled them into different orbits. Venus would have been an ice-coated comet, Desbra says, and the ice would have disintegrated when Venus approached the Earth and reached a point known as the Roche limit. 18. This is a vibrational safety device, if you like. When two bodies are on collision course, the one with the smallest mass starts to disintegrate at the Roche limit. In this case, the ice would have been projected from Venus' surface towards the Earth. Also, as it entered the so-called Van Allen belt, which absorbs much of the dangerous radiation from the sun, the ice would have been ionized, magnetized, and therefore attracted to the Earth's magnetic poles. 19 billions of tons of ice, cooled to -273 degrees centigrade, would have fallen on the polar regions, flash freezing everything in little more than an instant. 20. This, at last, would explain the mystery of the mammoths found frozen where they stood. The mammoth, contrary to belief, was not a cold region animal, but one which lived in temperate grasslands. Somehow those temperate regions were frozen in a moment. Some mammoths have been found frozen in the middle of eating. There you are munching away, and the next thing you know you're an ice lolly. If this ionized ice did rain down from Venus, the biggest build-up would have been nearest to the magnetic poles because they would have had the most powerful attraction. Again, that is the case. The ice mass in the polar regions is greater at the poles than at the periphery, and yet there is less snow and rain at the poles to create such a build-up. 21. The Venus scenario explains this. In the Book of Job, which is believed to be an Arab work much older than the rest of the Bible, the question is asked, whence cometh the ice? I would say we could have the answer. This further explains how the ancients could have had maps of what the North and South Poles looked like before the ice was there. The poles were ice-free until about 7,000 years ago. There was no ice age, as officially suggested. It's another illusion. When you look at the evidence that official science presents to support the conventional idea of an ice age, and the way this evidence is fundamentally contradicted by the provable facts. It is astonishing how such nonsense could become conventional truth in the first place. 22 Before this incredible cataclysm, and or one of the others, the Earth had a uniform tropical climate. As fossilized plants have shown, this would have been changed not only by the arrival of the ice on the surface, but also by the destruction of a canopy of water vapor around the Earth, as described in Genesis and other ancient texts. This canopy would have ensured a uniform tropical climate everywhere. But suddenly it was gone. The dramatic change in temperature at the poles would have collided with the warm air and caused devastating winds, exactly as described by Chinese folklore. The physicists said that the pressures created by the orbits of Venus around the Earth would have produced a 10,000-foot tidal wave in the oceans, and this again fits with the evidence that agriculture began at altitudes of 10,000 feet and higher. Plato wrote in his work, Laws, that agriculture began at high elevations after a gigantic flood covered all the lowlands. The botanist, Nikolai Ivanovich Vavilov, studied more than 50,000 wild plants collected around the world and found that they originated in only 8 different areas, all of them mountain terrain. 23 The tidal wave would have produced pressures on the Earth's surface of 2 tons per square inch, creating new mountain ranges and fossilizing everything within hours. 24 Artificial stone today is created by pressures of this magnitude. Intact trees have been found fossilized, and that would be impossible unless it happened in an instant, because the tree would normally have disintegrated before it could be fossilized over a long period of time. 25 In fact, fossils of this kind are not forming today. 26 They are the result of the cataclysmic events here described. Desbra says, the Russian Jewish psychiatrist and writer Immanuel Velikovsky caused outrage among the scientific establishment in the 1950s by suggesting that the Earth had been through enormous upheavals when Venus, which was then, he said, a comet, careered through this part of the solar system before settling into its present orbit. When Venus was photographed by the Mariner 10 mission, many of Velikovsky's descriptions proved correct, including what appeared to be the remnants of a comet-like tail. The Mariner 9 pictures of Mars also supported some of Velikovsky's theories. He said that the comet Venus had collided with Mars as it careered through the solar system. Velikovsky's time for these events was about 1500 BC. Different researchers dismiss each other's findings because they suggest very different periods for major upheavals, when in truth there were almost certainly a number of cataclysms in that window of 11,000 to 1500 BC. And even more recently, the study by the physicists also said that Mars was devastated by these events involving Venus. They felt Mars was thrown out of orbit and followed a highly unstable elliptical orbit which took it between the Earth and the Moon every 56 years. 27 The last of these passes appears to have been about 1500 BC, when the great volcano exploded on the Greek island of Santorini, and the Minoan civilization on Crete passed into history. In this same period of 1600 to 1500 BC, ocean levels dropped about 20%. Glacial lakes formed in California, and this was most likely the time when the vast lake in the fertile Sahara was emptied and the desert we see today began to be formed. 28 Eventually, Mars settled into its present orbit, but by then life on its surface had been obliterated. Yet again, the evidence on Mars supports all this. The Mars Pathfinder mission found that Martian rocks lack sufficient erosion to have been on the surface for more than 10,000 years. 29. Brian Desbra believes, like the physicists he knew and worked with, that the Earth was once much nearer the Sun than it is today, and that Mars orbited where the Earth now resides. If, as is claimed, The deep canyons on Mars' surface were caused by massive torrents of water. There had to have been a warmer climate on Mars. Because today it is so cold that water would freeze instantly and the near vacuum atmosphere would make the water instantly vaporize. 30 Desborough says that the Earth's closer proximity to the Sun demanded that the first Earth humans were the black races with the pigmentation to cope with the much fiercer rays of the Sun. Ancient skeletons found near Stonehenge in England and along the west coast of France display the nasal and spinal characteristics of many female Africans. 31 Desborough says that Mars, then with a climate very much like ours, had a white race before the Venus cataclysm. His research has convinced him that the white Martians built the pyramids which have been recorded on Mars, and they went to war with an advanced black race to conquer the Earth. These wars, he says, are the wars of the gods described in endless ancient texts, not least the Hindu Vedas. Desborough adds that after the cataclysm, the white Martians, who had settled on Earth, were stranded here without their technology and with their home planet devastated. These white Martians, he says, became the white peoples of the Earth. Fascinatingly, some scientists claim that when white people are immersed in sensory deprivation tanks for long periods, their circadian rhythm has a frequency of 24 hours 40 minutes, which corresponds not to the rotational period of the Earth, but of Mars. 32 This is not the case with non-white races who are in tune with the Earth's rotation. Desborough believes that these white Martians were the highly advanced race of the ancient world known as the Phoenicians or Aryans, and they began the long process of returning to their former technological power after the upheavals which destroyed the surface of their own planet and devastated this one. My own research supports this basic theme. Although, like everyone seeking the truth of what happened, I have many questions. A white race, known as the Phoenicians and other names, was certainly the brains behind the Egyptian civilization, at least from the period around 3000 BC. And the Giza Plateau, where the Great Pyramid was built, was formerly known as El Kahira, a name which derived from the Arabic noun El Kahir, their name for Mars. 33 Ancient texts reveal that the measurement of time was much related to Mars, and March 15th, the Ides of March, Mars, was a key date in their Mars-related calendar, as was October 26th. The first marked the start of spring and the second was the end of the year in the Celtic calendar. 34 The Holy Grail stories of King Arthur connect with this theme. Also, Camelot apparently Janine's Martian city or city of Mars. 35 I think there is truth in all the views summarized in this chapter of the cataclysmic upheavals the Earth has suffered in the period between 11,000 and 1,500 BC. The first one ended the Golden Age and obliterated the high-tech civilizations that had existed before then. The extraterrestrial races either left the planet beforehand or survived at high altitudes or by going deep within the Earth. The same with the later cataclysm. Many of the extraterrestrials, and most Earth humans, did not survive these events. Those that did were left with the job of starting all over again without, at least at first, the technology available before. The survivors fell into two main categories. Those of mostly extraterrestrial origin who retained the advanced knowledge, and humans, the slave race in general, who did not. The former also fell into two camps. There were those who wished to use their knowledge positively and communicate their information to humanity, and those who sought to hoard the knowledge and use it to manipulate and control. The struggle between those two groups over the use of the same knowledge continues to this very day, as societies recovered from those upheavals of 11,000 BC. The other cataclysms brought more devastation over the thousands of years that followed and humanity was faced with many new beginnings. One common theme throughout, however, has been the manipulation of humanity by an intellectually, though not spiritually, advanced race or races of extraterrestrial origin. On that subject, I must now introduce an added dimension to this story which will stretch your credulity to breaking point.